Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for today's town hall meeting. If you have questions when we get to the question and answer period, please use the mics in the room. And thank you for joining us online. Please leave a comment on our Facebook live feed if you have questions from online audience. At this time, I'll turn it over to Major General Evans for opening comments.
Okay, hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Major General Marcus Evans, and I'm the Senior Commander for U.S. Army Hawaii. And to my right is Command Sergeant Major Rob Haney, and then our garrison team led by Colonel Steve McGonigal and Command Sergeant Major Derek Wise. I appreciate you all showing up today here in person, and those of you that are dialed in on Facebook, thank you all for taking the time to come together. And what we want to do today is give a brief overview of what happened, and then answer any questions that you all have. And we fully acknowledge that there's going to be questions out there that we don't necessarily have an answer to, but our commitment is that we will follow back up with you as soon as we get a response. So the two individuals in the back, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Barth and Major Jeff Tolbert, will take those, and if something comes up and you don't feel like raising it here, you can pass those off or back through your chain of command, and we will follow up with you all. Hey, first off, let me start by saying that we are incredibly sorry for this. If you're looking at someone to place blame on as the Senior Commander for U.S. Army Hawaii, I take responsibility for what has occurred really over the last 26 hours. I am very thankful that here recently all of the power has been restored to the housing areas. I think right now we are still challenged with the PX in terms of being out of power. And some of those things may have changed, but as I was making our way over, I was given an update. And I think it's important that we are able to articulate why this has occurred and why different portions of the installation defined as Wheeler and Schofield came back online at different times, so everyone understands. I also think that it is important that we are prepared to answer questions, which I think the team is, on how you go about recouping loss of perishable items, as an example, that are stored in individuals' refrigerators. And then answering questions and understanding why were some schools open and why were others not, as an example with Solomon. So there's a lot that I think we need to work through and talk, and we look forward to that discussion today. But again, I take full accountability for the challenges that we have had as the Senior Mission Commander here, and we owe you a response and a understanding, and that's what the purpose is here for today. So yesterday at approximately 4 p.m., a series of high winds came through northern Oahu, and during that time we incurred damage. And it's important that I would like to first acknowledge our DPW team and our DES team that have really been working nonstop since this has occurred. Our HECO partners as well, also working on restoring electricity as quickly as possible. I would also like to thank the team over at the Schofield Inn, as well as our replacement company under the command of Colonel Katz and other brigade commanders, working to move about 80-plus families on shuttles and other means to be able to get into a hotel. Mr. Ed Fagan down at the Halikoa providing options down there, because what happened also yesterday is the roof on top of Schofield Inn, on one wing of it, was literally ripped off. And thankfully there were no injuries that occurred. There are individuals on site right now looking at the assessment, but Schofield Inn, for the time being, will have to be closed until we can make the right assessments and ensure that it is reopened in a safe and secure manner. And we're committed to working with the team to do that. So a Herculean effort by the team to restore power across posts, acknowledging we still have some portions of the installation that do not have power, but at least the residences and the barracks and the dining facilities have been restored.
They're still coming on.
Still coming on?
Yeah, there's still how.
Go ahead, Sergeant.
Sorry, to my knowledge, there's still some houses that are still coming on as switches are coming on, and some people are still. It takes time. We just can't turn them all back on at the same time, or they go off again. So I do think that it's in the process of coming on as we were coming in here. I think we were told that Menaher is being switched on and parts and pieces are coming on as the circuits are being switched. But I do echo your comments. I appreciate everybody coming together as a community and supporting one another during these times. And I know this is a highly emotional and charged time. I do. We look for opportunities to help one another and come together as a family and come together as a unit to support one another. We'll get through this and we'll continue to move forward. And I think we'll address some of these questions that come up. Did we mention during the opening, if you post questions in the comments, somebody can bring them up here and we can address them, or they could be addressed at a later date and time.
Yep, Sergeant Major, thanks for the comments and the clarification there. I'll go ahead and hand it off to Colonel Steve McGonigal and the Command Sergeant Major for U.S. Army Garrison Hawaii, and then we'll step through a brief overview and stand by for any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, sir. So we'll talk a little bit about what happened on Oahu yesterday and what that impact looked like outside our fence line, and talk a little bit about the challenge and how restoration proceeded for Schofield and Wheeler. And go ahead and move to the next slide. So if you're looking across Oahu, the weather patterns yesterday presented some significant challenges. They seemed a little bit more focused in central Oahu, but there were island-wide outages, not affecting every single part of the island. So if you're out driving around, there were definitely areas that absolutely still had power, and substantial numbers of them. But we saw about 120,000 customers across the HECO footprint that lost power. So that is out of the 900,000 roughly that live on Oahu, 120,000 were out of power at some point in time yesterday. That did at one point in time yesterday evening impact all of Schofield and Wheeler. So every single piece of Schofield and Wheeler lost power last night and was out for several hours. Move to the next one, please. And so what we're showing you here is really a map, and this is, for those of you out there, when the CG reference areas that were out of power, and that is for a period that really stretched for the earlier elements in Kalakaua and Porter from about 1240 yesterday. So that's when the CG reference about 26 hours to tracking that Mendonca went down yesterday about 1705 p.m. But a substantial time for power outage across the installation. And what was really occurring in the background is, so as we were discussing and looking at this last night, every single piece of Schofield and Wheeler was out of power. It was not resultant from installation or on-post issues with the electric grid on-post. It was feeder and distribution lines off-post that were no longer delivering power onto Schofield and Wheeler. So what HECO was doing was assessing, and we were talking directly with their chief operations and their VP for power delivery. And what they did is assessed very quickly where they could identify a clear fault and where they had resources to apply against that fault immediately. What that resulted in is Wheeler actually came up first last night, and that was pretty much all of Wheeler, so including Willy Wheeler housing area, barracks, all the housing on Wheeler came up yesterday evening just before about 2100. They were then able to isolate and identify the faults that were impacting Kastner substation, which sits really right off Willikina Drive. If you're driving along there, it's the one that's right along the fence line by Macomb Gate. So they were able to identify the fault there, and they also had to reroute power because there was another offline feeder. So really all feeder lines off post, 3 of them were down at one point in time. They were able to bring the Wheeler line back on and then use that to backfeed power into Kastner to bring Kastner up about 2230 last night. And then the challenge is the 2 lines that were feeding Kastner and Menaher were both still down, and they could not restore power to Menaher last night. And what that required was a substantial amount of vegetation removal on the lines. When the lines are down and no longer responding, they have to pull the line off. Otherwise, there's a risk of fire if that line is still energized while there's vegetation on it. So they pulled the power coming to Menaher. They had to pull that down, and they had to clear vegetation. That was the work that was ongoing in last night, identifying where those locations were, and then at first light having 4 crews out clearing vegetation, ensuring lines were properly mounted, not damaged, would not fall, and then re-energizing. And as the CG and SAR Major mentioned, that restoration and the switching at Menaher substation really occurred right around 1400 as we were coming in here. So the housing areas that are supported by Menaher are coming back online now. There is still one remaining fault that they are addressing now, and that is Kastner Circuit 6, and that is what is still has the post exchange without power right now. So they are working right now to bring the post exchange back up and online. I don't have an ETR on that one at this point in time, but that is the last fault that they are working on correcting as we move through it right now.
Hey, just as a point of clarification, Colonel McGonigal, can you just articulate, first off on Minnehower, the issues impacting that substation was external to the post, correct?
Yes, sir. The feeder line, and we did not have power coming in. We did not have an alternate line we could energize to bring power back into Menaher. So as soon as they got the vegetation cleared and were able to re-energize the 46 kilovolt line that feeds Menaher, I was optimistic, but still guardedly optimistic as I gave you the update. But when they re-energized Menaher, there was no additional faults found on Menaher, and so that right now is powered on and is holding. And they're out assessing right now. We're doing visual inspections. IPC is validating community centers and driving around to make sure that the power is still back on and is holding for all of the homes served by Menaher. So in terms of, Rick, if you could, or team, move to the next one. So services that were not impacted, Desmond Doss, and there has been some switching work. So the Schofield Commissary, there was some previous outage work we did this year during scheduled outages, and that fortunately had the commissary not going down with the PX. That would cause significant food losses there as well, and also impact our ability to shop. So the commissary did stay up and stayed open today. You can see the other ones that were able to function and operate today, and then what was offline. And so the other update is Solomon, along with the housing areas, was restored. So the remaining fault that we have to clear is the Schofield main exchange. So sure, as we move into the next one, and this is support efforts, and I know there was some discussion, particularly on the first one, and what our general goal, what we were trying to do is there are power outages do happen. I don't like any single power outage. I would like that the lights are on all the time and are reliable. We aren't there yet. But our goal is that we never ask a family to stay in a home without power for 2 nights. And so that's what the senior commander directed and what we were moving to before we got restoration reporting now is TLA. And what that is temporary lodging allowance. And that would allow a family to come get a TLA memo from those impacted communities and then obtain a hotel room. That would still, you would have to then file your TLA voucher on the backside and be reimbursed for that. And the other option that the senior commander was asking us to look at, understanding every family situation is different, is to authorize either a partial or a full TLA, but that would be, and this is for future as we're looking at, would be at the choice of the family. So if we are in, again, a situation in the future, our goal is to never have you be in a home for 2 nights without power, but to give you the option as a resident of a full or partial TLA. A full, you could go out and get a hotel room and file for the hotel and meals, or if you elected to stay in your home, you could still file for meal reimbursement. And so moving on, really looking at the next two, because that's sort of the focus that we see now, is understanding that the extended power outage presents problems. Food spoilage inside, you want to ensure you are not serving your family food that has potentially been compromised by the extended outage. But that is really financial assistance and services, and then potentially also legal assistance, depending on what you see as potential claims. So we can deal with some more specific situations. There's particularly acute ones, but generally what we'll say is, in terms of financial assistance, is AER is one of the #1 options that we have, and that is available through the ACS. They can do loans, they can do grants. down at the command level within your organizations, identifying and coming up online and saying, hey, I have an issue. I just bought groceries. My house is stocked. I don't get paid for another approximately 2 weeks. I need help with food. Is coming up with a chain of command and saying, hey, I got an issue. And I know that's hard to do sometimes, but in working through and finding that assistance, AER is absolutely one of the best and most immediate options, particularly for loans, or potentially if there's an acute situation, they could also look at a grant. American Red Cross is also available out there, and I also say for acute problems, chain of commands as you're working through it, the chaplains are another resource. We are talking Armed Services YMCA to see if we can adjust schedule on the Ohana market and pantry drop to see if we can bring some additional assistance in. I don't have a date and time group on that one right now, but we are working to look at what options and how can we assist families out there. But AAR, I would say, is one of the most immediate and readily available. They distribute about $2 million a year to families in Hawaii to help with acute needs and problems that come up, anywhere from car breakdowns to, in this situation, support for power outage to help families ensure in their time of need that they can take care of themselves.
So 22nd is ASYMCA. That's the next day.
Yep, so Sergeant Major said the 22nd right now is the next scheduled ASYMCA Ohana food pantry drop. But we'll see if we can work with them as well to see if there's availability to bring one in earlier or potentially to expand the amount offered during that 22nd drop.
Yes, Steve, thank you. Several questions coming in, and a large portion of them right now dealing with reimbursing food that was lost. And the garrison commander just articulated a few different ways that you can approach this. That's from the Army Emergency Relief Fund and working back through the chain of command. There is also a Army claims process that can be executed, which we can provide additional information for, and then an insurance claim through your homeowner's insurance. Steve, any amplification on any of those points?
No, sir. I acknowledge that homeowners claim in AAR are probably not what you would like to hear from us, but those are the paths and the options that we have. Senior commanders asked us to go back and look and identify if there are any other potential creative options to help us deal with outages, but right now that is the systems that exist, and those are the best options. I know homeowners is generally one that you would say, I don't want to file a homeowner's claim. I'm worried about my rates. I'm worried about my coverage. Acknowledge that, but that is one of the most immediate paths that is established. And in terms of AAR, AAR can potentially offer a grant in acute challenges, but again, I did say loan, and I understand that when you say, hey, AAR loan, that is also something that would have to be repaid. Understanding AAR is not the same as having to go to a bank for a loan or to go off post to other places that are charging a significant percentage rate for a loan. So it is a zero interest rate loan. So it is, in terms of if there is a challenge and need, that is an established pathway that can bring assistance, understanding it is not a grant, it is a loan, so that would be a repayment, but that is generally a flexible schedule and better than having to go through a loan process. Or I would also argue, I would encourage, although it is not free money, the AR loan is also a better option than moving into establishing more credit card, because those are also come with percentage rates and payment.
Hey, another question that came across was why the disparity in schools in terms of what was open and what was not. Steve, why don't you talk a little bit about the Department of Education process? But in short, this morning when the sun came up, Solomon had electricity at that time, and our other two schools on the installation with Wheeler and DKI Elementary did not. But talk through that decision-making process with the Department of Education, please.
Yes, sir. And so as you said, DOE really 0530 came in, and it was Wheeler Elementary, Wheeler Middle, and DKI did have electricity coming in this morning, and Solomon did not have electricity. So what the school administration does is they come in and they're really looking at a couple of things. One, what is community impact? Does it better to have students in school? And then can they safely administer what they have planned for that day without power? DOE tends to try and keep school open if they feel they can do it safely, but based on not having power overnight, some uncertainty, impacts to families. They did not assess that they could run school within Solomon Elementary today safely, guarantee that they could get lunches transported over to students from other schools. And so the decision was made to close Solomon for today and not have school. All the other schools on installation were able to operate normally. But really, it's a multi-part. And DOE will try to keep students in school, not today, but yesterday. Schools all had power fluctuations throughout the day. They were able to continue on even without some power in the afternoon and still provide education. But in this case, they made the call this morning that they did not feel they could operate Solomon Elementary safely today. The adjustment that we did make in response to that is the Schofield Barracks School Age Center for students that are enrolled there for before and after was able to offer full day care for any students that were in the full day care or before or after program, as they would on another training holiday or DONZA where units did not have activity, but the school was closed, but the school age center remained open.
Yeah, Colonel McGonigal, thanks for that. Hey, we've got some questions that have come in. Let's start going through those, and we'll take as many as we can, as long as we need from here in the audience or online. But Steve, let's start going through some of the questions that have been raised thus far. Okay.
Yes, sir. So take the first one. There's actually a couple of questions here, but this is one that came up last night as well, and it's reference solar panels on the homes. And there are homes across Schofield largely that have solar panels on the roof. What those solar panels do not have for the community is a battery backup system that goes along with them. So they manage demand, they reduce overall grid demand during periods of daylight, but as soon as we move into a nighttime situation where they're no longer producing energy, they do not have a battery component to it that will allow them to continue to provide power to the home. Unhelpful in this situation, but there is a pilot project that is launching down at AMR, and if you live down there, you'll see efforts, and that is installing a solar panel array on a house, and there'll be clusters of homes, and those homes will have a battery backup system on them. That would allow those homes, then those batteries, to maintain power even during periods of no sun and no power. So it is something we're moving to. We simply aren't there yet, but trying to get there. And one of the questions on this was, why not give us gas stoves? Understand, I personally prefer a gas stove in a home, but right now the infrastructure does not exist. There are not gas lines running through the neighborhoods to homes to be able to bring gas lines into homes to do stoves. And right now, the electric stoves are what we have available.
Might as well keep that. I got a question for you. So the Family Assistance Center is set up right now. Is that true? Over at building 690?
So, Sergeant Major. I think I'm back on. So, Sergeant Major, the ACS was open, and what we were looking at is whether we were going to have to shift into issuance of TLA memos to allow people to have somewhere to go tonight with electricity. With the power coming back on right now, not moving towards the TLA issuance. So the ACS Center is open, and we can look at extended hours, but that would principally be answering questions about support, AAR, other community resources that ACS does and answers questions about every single day at that facility.
Okay, so we might need to extend the hours, and then do we know if anybody's out there supporting people that might be in line or anything? And I'm actually just asking for the group that's here, if people are out there standing in line, have any of our organizations or any of the units gone out there to maybe provide water or talk to one another, or spread the word out there? Does anybody know? Nobody in here? Okay. I mean, that could be something we can look at if people are still over there in line waiting to get information on AER loans or any of those other financial help, or lawyers that might be over there trying to help out, if we're still running 690 as a emergency center.
Sorry, Major, we didn't open it up as a full EFAC, so ACS is open and functioning, but we were on the verge of opening the EFAC and issuing out TLA memos there and then at another location, but we have not initiated that process.
Okay, I don't want to add confusion, but we're not doing TLA memos, but is this place going to be open for getting further information following this brief, or how do we get in contact with AER? So is that something we can continue to push over there? Is that the one place where we can do it?
It is Sergeant Major, and then the commands do have authority to sign off on immediate AER at the command level, and then AER is there for additional support resources. So we'll push the messaging out on that, and then also look to engage directly with individuals coming in. So if ACS still has people there, we've already given them warning, be prepared to stay open later. So if there are still people coming in, we'll continue to serve the community as needed, and then also ask them to reach out where they have particular points of friction and make sure that change of command are tracking where there are issues.
Yeah, I'm really highlighting this is an evolving situation. We're looking at solutions to, help one another and to help the garrison and help, across the community. And really looking for opportunities to get information out and to clarify information. So, if that's what we're doing, I continue to look at a place where people can go.
Yeah, Sergeant Major, and to your point, we had Ms. Haley over here from the USO, exceptional partner. So as soon as you said snacks, some food, water, raised her hand in order to help assist over there at ACS if people are waiting in line to then get a snack and something to drink. Thank you, Ms. Haley.
So, sir, there was another question about working with Congress, appropriating funds towards Schofield area, ensure infrastructure is robust enough to withstand long-term environmental impacts, and that's a somewhat robust question, but that is something that we review. So there's really two paths that we pursue to bring investment into our community. Our electric grid is privatized, but through the annual work plan, there is work done on our infrastructure that the City Commander reviews and approves every year. And then we are also pursuing additional funding that is directly appropriated by project, by Congress for larger scale projects to bring in. And that goes from buildings to, say, water tanks. Right now, with the privatization of the grid, HECO is largely doing the investment in the electric grid. And they have a series of approximately 12 projects that they're undertaking over the next 3.5 to 4 years to improve the electric grid on Schofield. And that is something that has been ongoing. They've advanced designs over the past 24 months. They took over our grid in March of 22, and they've advanced all of those 12 projects to a more advanced design stage and manage some delivery of those projects will be accelerated. There's a couple that are a little more challenging, will take longer, but there is a substantial effort ongoing to improve both the electric and water infrastructure here on Schofield and Wheeler.
So we just had a question come in from social media, and it asks, can we use our GTC for hotels? No, you are not on TLA at this time. Do not use your GTC for hotels. If you are currently in the middle of PCSing and you're already on TLA orders, yes, you are in that process and you can continue to use your government travel card.
Hey, we also had another question come in that some residents are experiencing intermittent power outages. It's coming on, it's coming off again. I don't think that's necessarily not to be expected. However, if an individual, if a family continues to experience this, the question is, where do I go and how do I get authorized TLA? And so at this point, and I'm looking at Colonel Martin, if we're off base on this, please let me know. But what I would like to be able to effect is you show up to the Emergency Family Assistance Center, articulate what the issue is with the power, and then we are in a position to grant that temporary lodging allowance. Any concerns with that guidance going forward? If after we break here, people are still experiencing power outages that is preventing them preserving their food and remaining in their quarters. Okay. Steve, any comments there?
No, sir, I agree. So like if right now, if we are unable to stabilize and Menaher goes back down again, we would still, there's been one night without power. I would immediately come back to the senior commander and say, sir, Menaher's gone back down again, and recommend we immediately start issuing TLA memos out to the impacted communities. We would stand up the EFAC at ACS and potentially another location at a likely community center and issue TLA memos to allow people to move out so that you can be somewhere with power this evening. So I'm tracking right now. The team is still assessing. Seen some in the chat about fluctuations. I'm a little unclear if that is discussing some of the fluctuations we saw yesterday, because yesterday we had an outage, areas restored, outage again, and then some areas restored last night. So it was, power was on and off repeatedly yesterday. But right now I'm tracking. Menaher is back on, and so I'll come back with you, sir, and validate once we assess that there is power back on and that Menaher is holding.
And the place to go to work through this, again, back to the Sergeant Major's point, is at the Emergency Family Assistance Center, located building 690, correct? It
Yes,
will
sir.
be.
That is the
Yep.
ACS building that is there, Jason PX.
And so everybody is aware, how long can we keep that facility open tonight?
Sure, I'll owe you an answer back on how late. We asked to extend hours, but I don't have a good number on how late we can keep it open tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
There are some. So, sir, one other question came in, very good one, lessons learned, and specifically on this one. So this is off-post and principally driven by weather events, and one thing that we've been looking at and are going to readdress with HECO. So there is preventive maintenance. Preventive maintenance does not just entail maintenance done on the physical electric infrastructure, but aggressive tree trimming and vegetation management plans. And that has been something that this spring or winter and moving into spring has been a challenge. So in terms of lesson learned, what could have prevented the extent of outage we saw here was more aggressive vegetation management for where those lines are running off installation in order to prevent tree falls and other issues from taking down power lines. If they endure the wind themselves and the power line is intact, really the greatest danger to our power is falling limbs and trees in those wild areas that we see. So our power infrastructure on all of Oahu really, it networks and spans the entire island, and the Wahiawa substation we see here in central Oahu really feeds all the way up to the North Shore. They had outages as well, but there is a substantial amount of line and 24, different locations or 22 locations that we have. But HECO has miles and miles and miles of line that are crossing heavily vegetated landscape of Hawaii that has really a 365-day growing season. So it is not a small task, but that is one that we will push on and say, hey, we need to look at vegetation management off installation to prevent weather like this from causing more prolonged outages.
Yeah, and I think one of the other lessons learned that we could all take on, and again, I own this as the senior mission commander, is a consistent flow of communication. I think we had a period yesterday that, particularly last night, where there was a gap in information flow after we put out the 0900 start time for the post. There should have been something in between when we put that out. I think it was around 10 o'clock last night or so, and then when the next update came out. So clearly the vegetation aspect for off-post locations where that wiring comes from, but then also a more consistent flow of communication is a lesson learned that I have, and that we will take back and work to improve.
So, sir, there's one, and I'll ask the lawyers to weigh in on this one as well as a point, but being reimbursed for past expenses, i.e. per diem, groceries, and the short and blunt answer is I don't know of a pathway yet. Senior commander's asked us to look at it, so we're seeing if we can identify, is there an option? But I don't have a method at disposal right now, and I've not been able to give one to the senior commander that says here we can go back and retroactively reimburse. This is a challenge, and power outages unfortunately aren't unique to Hawaii. So reaching out and asking some other installations as well. We've had significant power outages, and I'm not familiar yet that we across the Army enterprise have come up with a way to reimburse individual expenses for food in the event of a power outage that is caused by weather. Now, if there was a for instance, a military training activity that damaged the electric lines, then that could be a potential because that is direct military activity. But in the event of weather outages, that is a challenge that we have across all Army installations, but one we are feeling here acutely right now. But sir, we'll keep digging, but I can't give you a solid answer that we have a pathway right now. I would like to be able to, but I don't have one right now, sir. Sir, one other question about generators for housing, and the short answer on that one is we cannot purchase enough generator capacity here on island to feasibly be able to power our housing areas off of generator capacity. So there are some generators on installation. Those are really allocated to a few mission critical nodes to keep those operational. But for instance, as we brought Wheeler back on last night, that was 7 megawatts of power that were coming onto Wheeler as that system re-energized, and there is not enough generator capacity to bring that and have that be able to come back online. So it would be, a thought, hey, could I power my home off a generator? We don't have the capacity to be able to power all of our houses off generators.
So I did want to clarify, there's been a lot of discussion on social media. Do not use your government travel card to buy food. Do not use your government travel card to pay for lodging right now. That is not authorized. The other thing I want to highlight is this room is full of leaders, commanders, sergeant majors, first sergeants, company commanders, and leaders across our organizations. Please continue to, have engaged leadership and go to those areas and soldiers that might need more need or might still have power outages and might need help. Additionally, our chaplains have resources. The clear information flow just needs to make it to the appropriate channels. So I know we're addressing, a lot of people on Facebook, but again, that information doesn't always come across in a question on, social media, or doesn't always come across from somebody here in the room. Sometimes it needs to come up through the chain of command to get the right help to the right people at the right time. We do realize that there are going to be bits and, houses that are still down that just didn't come back up after the power got turned back on. And those need to be clearly communicated back through IPC and DPW or chains of command to get to the right people. So it's not a top-down driven, we fix everything from the garrison level. There are chains of command that can also help out to get those people that need help the most, the quickest. And then lastly, there are a lot of people in here that are sitting. If anybody has any questions in here, please feel free to step up to the mic because we'd also like to hear your questions.
Sir, Sergeant Major, I'm Staff Sergeant Youngblood. How y'all doing? So my question is, and I'm understanding the TLA, right? So I look at myself as a senior leader. Me personally, I would never tell a soldier, right, to go to AR. I'm not going to put a soldier in another predicament to get a loan if they don't have the money right now, right? And that's me personally, right, as a senior leader. My question to you is, this is not the first time this has happened, right? I still don't believe that it was handled from the first point when the light kept going off for almost 30 days. AMR has experienced water outage, and they have gotten TLA every day when they had a water breakdown. So my question to the seniors, right, how's that fair to us for people who work, take care of our families? Because right now, I didn't go to work today because my biggest thing is family. That I'm a firm believer in my family, my wife and kids. And the example to you is, I've been in the hospital 8 days with my son, right? Because he has nosebleeds. I cannot afford for my son to be in the house with no power, no heat. To include, we have mothers in our community, right, with breastfeeding. I have a child who's been on a nebulizer that has to use the nebulizer machine to breathe. So I don't agree with the AR, again, because I would never put myself in another financial stability. And to be honest, I have a second source of income because the Army's not going to pay me what I have to afford, especially on island, especially with COLA going away. It's a lot of stuff that's going on. So again, my question to you is, what is the go away for tonight? Because right now, is probably going to be in a situation to where I have to go to the hospital with my son. He's experienced 2 nosebleeds back to back, and I just can't afford that to happen. So I slept in my car last night with the AC on. That's something I have to do because he cannot be in heat. So that's my question to you as seniors.
Sir, I'll let you talk. There is one detail piece that I do want to mention for those out there is if you do have a medical necessity for electricity because there is a piece of equipment in your home or someone in your home who cannot be without AC or power and that is registered, I need you to make sure you're engaging with IPC. IPC keeps those records on hand, and so last night IPC was calling all of the residents that had a registered need for electric or AC because of a medical condition in the home and directly reached out and contacted every single resident that they had in their data that needed that and asked them if they needed somewhere else to go and what was the situation. Last night they were all declined and said, no, we're still okay. We're going to remain in our home tonight. But if you do have a situation where you say, my family cannot stay in the home because of a medical condition, please reach out to IPC, reach out to the community center and get that registered so it is in your file and we will follow up. That was one of the questions we were running through last night was, do we have any medical needs for electricity and where do we put them? How do we move them? That would be down to AMR if there are e-suites available down there or on a case-by-case basis moving them into other facilities.
Staff Sergeant, thanks for your heartfelt words and caring for your family. I want to meet with you right after this, and we'll take care of you. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. We do need to know about the eaches of everybody's situation and people coming forward to take care of their soldiers and to take care of their families and to take care of themselves. This, as Colonel McGungle said, this is a situation where we do have a lot of available resources where we can take care of it in the immediate term. What we're adjusting up here was post-wide, but I'll meet with you right after this. Thanks.
Hey, Command Sergeant Major, thank you very much. Staff Sergeant, thank you for highlighting that as Colonel McGonigal brought up. Part of the challenge is just understanding where the issues are and where we can assist. So, Sergeant Major, we'll talk with you right after this. I'll speak with you as well. But I just want to publicly thank you for raising that concern with your children, because you're exactly right, and Colonel McGonigal is right. There are opportunities if we have visibility on concerns like you just highlighted with your child that we could have made some adjustments, just like we did last night with the 86 families that had to depart Schofield Inn. Sergeant, thanks again for those comments.
So I have a question. I actually have a few questions, and I think I'll start with the first. How do you all determine how the power is allocated? Because I, in my opinion, as a mother of 3, don't see a chapel, a sports field, a recreation center, any of those places needing power over the homes of these families.
So it's not a question of allocation. In this case, it was a question of the feeder line coming into Menneher substation. So we could not get any power into Menneher, and the substations here on Schofield are not tied together, so we also can't shift load from Menneher onto Kastner substation where we did have power. So where the outages are, it's not a matter of allocation. It's not a matter of saying, well, I want power here and I don't want it here. It was determined by what substations we could restore service to as quickly as possible. And unfortunately, Menneher was the one, due to the number of tree falls off posts, that it took the longest to clear those to be able to re-energize that line to get power into the Menneher substation. So it was not trying to power a sports field or a chapel. And our general goal, as we're discussing this, is to restore power to housing as quickly as possible. But in this case, there was not an alternate method to get power into Menneher in order to bring those circuits back online.
Hey, ma'am, thank you very much for that question. And that is a very, very fair question. Much like comments that have come up hey, why is no one working at Menaher? And as we take that feedback back and understand that it's being done, it's just outside because it's not impacted. And we had this discussion last night. And in terms of prioritization that we gave to the team was first to Colonel Green and his MP brigade, make sure the installation is secure. Make sure that families and soldiers are safe and the installation is secure. The second one is ensure that we can get power to families. And as we talk through this, it wasn't as simple as diverting power from a baseball field or for a gym into the family housing. Our first priority is the safety and security and the quality of life here. And I wish we had that ability to just say, okay, turn on this housing area, turn on that housing area, take that power from facilities like you just annotated. That is a great question. I appreciate you raising it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, did we sufficiently answer
No,
your
you definitely
question?
did. I
Okay.
appreciate that. Another question that I have is, in the future, do you guys have anything in line if something like this were to happen? I think that you guys have seen all of our comments on social media. Last time this happened, you guys said, here's some burgers and some water, and we're sorry about that. What do you have for the future to help families out? When we have devices we need powered up, we need to be able to stay in contact to know what's going on. Do you have somewhere that you can bring the community to be able to charge their devices and sit in AC and provide them with water and food, because we've gone extended periods of time, me, myself, 26 hours, with no electricity and my food's spoiled. And not everybody has the luxury to just go out and get fast food and buy new groceries, because some of us, we're on limited funds. So what do you guys have in place, or do you have anything in place for the future for something like this?
Yeah, so I appreciate the question. If you've been here for a while and you're thinking back to August of 22, when the separate complete issue, the Menaher substation had a transformer failing. We got a new transformer put in there in October of 22, and that stabilized that. But in that situation, what we were experiencing was multiple prolonged outages that were impacting that area, and that's really the repeated and prolonged is what was driving and bringing in where we were like, all right, it's not a 24-hour and then moving into a 48 hours where we're trying to get the TLA. And so as the situation develops, and if we don't have a good estimated time of restoration where we say, hey, we can get power back into your home, we have to start expanding, and that really comes down to assets that are at the control at leadership, but also understanding that those assets are then being pulled off of missions and off of training. So there is not, we don't have a magical guarantee of power somewhere, but keeping facilities open for charging, keeping facilities open for AC that need them, those are things that we can look at. And ideally, we'll be more. My goal is to be a little more responsive on those in the future. We have exercised those sometimes. Challenge here was really trying to assess and get a good handle on when power, and that's when power was not coming on until morning. Started moving very quickly on TLA because our assessment was saying if we can't get you power today, asking you to stay in your home another night is not acceptable, and take that as feedback in terms of lesson learned, offering more complimentary services potentially this morning, saying, hey, here's a facility specifically open for you to come sit and charge. We didn't push that out, and we probably should have.
Yeah, great question. So 1 hour is 1 hour too long, and it impacts families. And then it compounds over time, as you brought up. So I think our takeaway that we owe back is if there is a power outage, where can residents go, recharge devices, get essentials like water, like air conditioning that was brought up, and is everyone aware of that process for gaining access? That is tremendous feedback, and we shouldn't necessarily be bounded by a 24-hour time period, because 24 hours looks very different depending on each family's individual situation. So given the frequency of the electrical outages and, quite frankly, the water challenges, we should consider, and we will go back and figure out how we can maintain some kind of facility that is activated in the event of infrastructure outages, electrical or water.
Thank you. The last question that I had was, there seems to be a lack of communication between the military and its families. We seem to learn about things in our community that are affecting us through Spectrum, through the wives, through the husbands, but never the garrison. They are always last to acknowledge and speak on a power outage, a water outage, anything that we may have going on. So moving forward, as far as communication goes, how do you guys plan on effectively communicating with us instead of leaving us in the dark to communicate with each other and wait on a response from you?
Yeah, no, timeliness is important. The other is that we are often working diligently in the background trying to be able to provide more context or information about what's going on. So when the outage goes out and people are saying, hey, it's out, we were generally hearing about it, and then we're immediately going into trying to determine exactly what is going on, why is there an outage, so that we can push good information. Timeliness, acknowledge that, and we'll look at that. And it may be a better technique rather than trying to be able to answer questions, just say, hey, there is an outage and we're developing it. I see a nod, so we'll take a look at that one, because I agree communication is absolutely important. I would say, though, that that does not mean we do want the community, we want to have a community communication network as well, so that, that it's not your only source of information, and being able to share information in the community. We appreciate that there are community pages out there. There are other networks sharing and bringing information up, but I'll take the timely and more quickly, even if we don't have all the answers or even have a good solution, to be able to at least say, hey, acknowledge working it, and we'll provide an update.
I think acknowledgement for a lot of us, that's kind of all we're looking for. Acknowledge this is what's going on. Hey, we're looking into it. Hey, we're working on it. Whatever that looks like for you guys. But just making sure we're all on the same page. I think that's what we're all looking for at the end of the day. You don't have to have all the answers, because you're not at that time with whatever is going on. But like you said, just an acknowledgement we could appreciate. Thank you.
Ma'am, that is tremendous feedback. I will offer that every issue that comes up, one of the first questions after is everybody safe, is how are we communicating back to the members of this Ohana, families, soldiers, people that live and work on the installation. I thought we were doing a little bit better than what you just articulated. So the fact that you raised this as a concern helps us cover one of our blind spots and get better in a more consistent information flow. So thank you very much again for raising that.
Thank
And
you,
we have to get better in that area.
Thank you.
So kind of piggybacking off of what everybody said and what you guys have said already, the AER gives out $2 million a year, I believe is the number that you gave out. So why are we being asked to take out a loan to pay for our groceries a second time, to have to pay it back with a COLA cut on top of all of the gas, fast food eating that we've already done in the last almost 48 hours? Why is it not an automatic grant? Because as a loan, that implies that some people won't get that. And how do you expect us to feed them? I'm a full-time student, my husband works, we DoorDash on occasion just to be able to pay bills with COLA cuts and paychecks being messed up. So.
Again, I appreciate all you're doing, and I can hear the emotion in your voice, and I feel for you and your family. A grant is one of the first things you can look at for AER. I think he highlighted loan as being one of the other options that they might ask you to look at as you go to AER. They're going to take a look at your financial need and help you in the right direction based off of the situation.
But that's not enough.
It's not really up to us to just say right away that you're just going to get a grant or a loan. It's based off of the situation. But a grant and a loan is, available to everybody.
But then who gets to say on if it's a grant or a loan? I shouldn't have to pay for my groceries twice on top of eating out and all of these other things it should be an automatic, oh, you've not had power for 26, 32, whatever hours, here's $300. It's not a lot, it's maybe a week worth of groceries here, a gallon of milk and 2 cartons of eggs at this point, so why are we not being given money through the AAR, which you said is for emergency release? And as you can hear, that's what a lot of the families have. So who makes that determination? Because I shouldn't have to, that's my only dependence, oh, maybe I'll get a loan and then I'm paying for these groceries twice, or I get nothing because maybe they don't want to give you a loan and they've told you no to a grant. So then who's putting the groceries back in my fridge that have gone bad?
I'll turn it over to you in just a second, sir. I mean, it's a valid discussion, and we've done some other things in the past that came from higher in AER's offices that were authorized. But that's a very good point. I don't think I have an answer that's going to suffice you right now. I think we'll have to follow back up.
It can be AER grants. You guys can go to the communities and give out commissary gift cards, but we shouldn't be responsible for paying double the groceries and then having to wait for it to come back along with COLA cuts, paycheck mess ups, and everyday life. That's not fair.
Sir, I don't know if I have an answer to that question right now. I think there's some things that we can look into.
Yeah, sorry, the real short answer is AER is a separate agency that we allow to operate on post and has ties to the military, but it is not something that the Army specifically controls. So really AER and those counselors there are looking at families' need, how acute is it, and what is the appropriate way to address that. So we don't call AER and say, you're going to give out grants. The Sergeant Major said, we can look and engage in discussions and say, hey, is there a way to expand some of the analysis and look at where do we grant loans versus grants specifically for something that is totally outside the control of a family in this situation versus, hey, we had unseen expenses and we had some plane tickets and some other costs that came up, but this is really the power as a separate entity. So I will go back and ask, but the short is we do not have the capability to order AER to issue grants. That is something that organization controls on and assesses on a case-by-case basis for a loan versus a grant.
Yeah, and ma'am, you raise a valid concern, similar concerns that everyone has brought up. And listening and reflecting, so I think there's different pathways to be reimbursed. One is from the homeowner's insurance filing a claim. The other is going the AER route, and with that is the grant or the loan. And then the other is working through the Army claims process. And we are happy to assist you and your family on any one of those that we can be of assistance with.
Sir, and I'll add, so it's just an option. I would much rather prefer each and every single one of our soldiers to have a 0% interest loan than to go over to WAHIWA and then you're talking, you don't even know what the percentage could be from any of those organizations. I think we can take this back to the AER headquarters and see if there are any additional options for grants. So I think we can take this one on.
So there's one I was going to address that came in as we get, but about other branches.
Hang on.
Oh, sorry, sir. Go ahead.
Go ahead, sir.
Sir, thank you for your time, Sergeant Major as well, Sergeant Max. My question is, every time that I've been here for a few years, and every time that one of these power outages that goes on for more than just like a few minutes or whatever happens, I end up going off post to get food or just anything. And every time I go off post, immediately off post, I'm visited by a bright, stable electricity grid. And they never seem to have the problems when we have similar weather events. So my question is, did I hear correctly that HECO took over the grid on post in 22?
That is correct. March 22.
Okay, so I would say that I've been here prior to that, and I would say that the grid was, I would say, like a solid C, and then they took it over and it's gone off a cliff. So who's holding them accountable for their failures to maintain our infrastructure while the immediate outside areas, Mililani, Wahiwa, on a consistent basis, has stable, dependable power?
So I'll talk a little bit. I think the solid Cs was potentially generous. So HECO took over our grid in March of 22, and we handed them, in the case of what we saw in August 22, a Menaher substation that had one transformer that was failed already and another one that was failing. So to be frank, the problems that we've experienced and across our installations in Hawaii, it's not just Schofield and Wheeler. We've had the longest power outage that we've experienced recently has been 50 hours at HMR, where we did end up issuing TLA. What resulted in that condition is nothing from what HECO has done in the past, coming up on 2 years. It was the condition of the grid and deterioration that has really taken place over the span of a decade plus. It's easy to say HECO took over and then it's been problematic, but I will say HECO's done some good work. They're generally a pretty good partner with us. There are some things that they could probably pursue a little bit more aggressively with some off-post vegetation. They respond with more assets than what we have. If we were not privatized and had what we've had over the past couple months, it would be incredibly challenging. We had 5 high-voltage personnel on the entire Garrison staff to maintain the grid, and it was not in a good situation. So privatization has put us in a better position to respond and path, but unfortunately, it will take a substantial investment from HECO in both money and time to bring the grid up to what I would deem is a reliable condition that we can count on it more regularly.
Roger. Thank you, sir. In the buildup or the revitalization that you said it's in a 3.5 to 4 year plan, given today's events, is there any push to accelerate that plan? Because most of us here won't be here in the 3.5 to 4 years when that project is complete.
No, they're working to accelerate. There are some technical feasibility issues with some really components. So for instance, when we brought that Menaher new substation transformer in October, that wasn't from an order. Right now, a transformer to order and bring a new one in sits somewhere between 36 and 40 months of time. So that transformer is actually diverted from another project on Hawaii Island to come to Menaher to help restore that grid. And anybody who's here August, September, October of 22 knows that the power was, I would argue, incredibly challenging during that stretch of time. It was unsuitable. And so it's gotten better in that situation, but we still have challenges. We've managed to keep those shorter. This one, like the CG said, 1 hour. I would like to never have to call the CG in the night and tell him, sir, there's a power outage. But we aren't there yet. So it is diligent effort. It is long-term investment, and then really taking some of your feedback here. But how do we, because I don't want to say this, but there's likely going to be another power issue sometime in the future. So how do we listen to your input and respond more quickly, act where we can decisively, and then manage what is a grid that is not desirable right now for the next couple years as we work to restore that as quickly as possible. And that's where, when you see those scheduled power outages, though it's not just HECO saying, hey, we want to shut the power down here overnight or here. Most of those scheduled outages are to bring the grid down to conduct critical repairs that they've identified as deficiencies. So they are working on a daily, weekly basis. They are on our grid and doing repairs.
Thanks, sir.
Hi. I kind of wanted to piggyback off of that too. We've been here, my family has lived here for a decade on Schofield specifically. Power outages and everything in that realm have been uniquely significant here on Schofield since 2014. Even compared just to the Wheeler side, I can say firsthand, this has been an ongoing thing regularly, and I feel like year after year, it's the same parade of the same problem going on and the same outrage, and as he just mentioned before, the turnover of people moving in and out, so, you know, the outrage comes and goes as we go. We live in Hawaii, the most expensive state in the country, and I understand we do receive some COLA for that, although that has been cut this past year. Living on Schofield specifically does seem uniquely more expensive compared to Hickam, Wheeler, HMR, everywhere else in terms of these power outages. Personally, our family's been dropped from USAA and Geico over the past decade because after you make so many claims, they will drop you. At this point, we don't have renter's insurance because we were already dropped from the other two. My husband and I do both work, so I do feel fortunate that we are okay to, go out to dinner and do whatever we need to do for our family in situations like this. Although I don't think the majority of families here are both working, or maybe they aren't in a situation where they could do that. I'm a bit concerned about the regular incoming people who aren't aware of these power outages. Even just compared to Wheeler, which is right across the street, I think that there needs to be some education done for families coming in to be aware of these problems before they decide to live somewhere where this is an ongoing problem. I still to this day don't truly understand what is really wrong with the transformer or how this keeps occurring, but we've had 18 to 24-hour power outages over the last decade here. Short of, as you guys mentioned, like an AER loan or the ASYMCA, the food drop, they do non-perishable items. The majority of the people here who have lost food, they've lost milk, meats, other things that are perishable. So I'm not sure that that's a really equitable solution to that problem because that's not what people are missing out on right now. Suggesting that people take out an AER loan in situations like this, generally AER loans are for extreme emergency situations, and this, while it is an emergency situation, this is not out of nowhere. This is a common problem. So it seems a little bit tone deaf to recommend families take out loans for such a thing like this. I'm not really sure exactly what the answer is, although personally I do wish that we would have had more information about what living here is actually like and what to expect in terms of power outages, because it is significant compared to every other base on this island. I work all across the island. I'm very familiar with this island, and Schofield specifically, this is where it tends to occur regularly. This is just such a problem to the point where, like, everyone in this room right now and online, like, they might be outraged, but as you mentioned, they might not be here in a year, but in a year it's just going to be a new group of people experiencing the same problem. Additionally, we do receive COLA, but in this situation with Schofield being specifically more expensive to live on due to these power outages and all the accompanying problems that come with it, I'm curious about if there's any consideration to alter how COLA is given for where we live here, because it's to offset the expenses of living somewhere. It is extremely expensive here to take a family out to dinner for the past 4 meals. Yesterday, our power was out for lunch, dinner. This morning it was out for breakfast, and it's off now too, and our water is actually still off. So for my family alone, just to go to like McDonald's, it's about $60 for all of us. So as this continues, I'm just curious long-term, like if there's going to be any considerations made for COLA and for the people who do live here, valid options outside of taking out loans or getting non-perishable items.
Yeah, so first off, thanks for the context, the decade of challenges. You raised several valid points. First, I think it absolutely warrants providing people that are new here to Schofield an awareness in terms of how many power outages and what that equates to potentially in lost perishables, like you brought up. So we will take that one back with our newcomers briefs as well as back down to the units to educate people. I think you also raise a fair point on the COLA aspect, and our ability to articulate that also relies on our ability to be able to pull the data and to be able to show the impacts of those power outages. So we will absolutely take both of those on. I don't think it will be necessarily a quick fix on the COLA aspect, but I know the education can start immediately for people that are just being assigned to U.S. Army Hawaii living here at Schofield.
Is there any option of relief in terms of for people who have, I understand not like a flat amount for everybody, but who have documented expenses, who are unable to use renter's insurance at this point, to no other fault other than living here? Because like I said, we personally have been dropped from 2 different companies, from USAA and Geico. I'm just curious at this point if there's anything else we can personally do ourselves, like outside of just keep savings for situations like this. Is there anything else that we can expect? Because I feel like we're personally doing everything we can to protect ourselves in situations like this, but it just seems unfair at this point that living on Schofield comes with those situations.
Yeah, and you know, your situation saying that you've been dropped from renter's insurance, there is the Army claims process that is additionally you can file, and some of that information will be posted, and you can file for it through the Army, through the Staff Judge Advocate's office over at the Center for Personal Claims Services, CPCS. Is that what it's called? Yeah. So.
Does that only apply for Army members or different branches?
I'm deferring to my resident judge here. Does that apply to all DoD personnel, sir?
Yes, so Colonel Martin, your SJ, that specific, so first of all, it's a website. It's online that you use to file a claim. That specific website is oriented toward Army and Army dependents. There are claim services throughout the military branches. I don't know what the websites are or particular references, but that particular one, yes, is for Army personnel.
We're an Air Force family, so I guess that wouldn't apply to us, but for the Army families who that would apply to, does that only cover up to a certain amount? And I guess what is the process for that?
Sure. The claims payment is always conditions dependent, and so there's not a set amount per se. It depends on what you lost and what the claim is. And to answer your question, I don't know the Air Force tie-in right now, but the Family Access Center that we have available, we have a legal person there. I'll make sure that they're armed with that information, and so we can be ready to provide that to all service members, not just Army, who may be on the installation. So thank you for making me aware of that.
And lastly, sir, I assume we're following up on this thread from this Facebook, from this live stream on the Garrison page. Is that where we're going to answer questions? Colonel McGungle, is that where we're posting answers to all these questions?
And so much, I believe some that'll be pulled, follow up, and then we'll post most likely a follow-on Facebook post with a link to some information and some follow-up on ones that are still with due outs. But no, there's the Army claims process. The other services have a claims process, but it doesn't get you insurance
I'm
back.
just saying for Colonel Martin, the process would be back through the U.S. Army Garrison page, and that's how we're going to push out information?
Correct, Sergeant Major.
Okay.
Hi, I had a question in regards to like parenting. I saw a lot of feedback on like the multiple spouses pages about new moms losing breast milk due to the power outage. I know those aren't considered medically necessary, but if you are toying with the option of having like a charging and cooling center, is there a way to make it accessible to store our breast milk? We are a single income family. I breastfeed to offset the cost of buying formula, which is extremely expensive. I lost probably close to 1,200 ounces of breast milk due to this power outage. That is all of the breast milk that we had to feed our baby. So, sorry. Is there a way to make it accessible for other moms to bring their breast milk to store so that they don't come into this issue?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but I would like to think that we can certainly take that into consideration. I really appreciate you raising that concern as we go back and look at a course of action to have a facility that can absorb people, perishables, and provide access and service. So thank you for raising that. And again, as we go back and look at this course of action, Colonel McGonigal and Sergeant Major Wise, we need to take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And I don't know that we have a facility right now that could readily accept and then have in place the accountability and what I would say we would owe as a persistent oversight and presence for something that is incredibly valuable, but where you drop it off and there is a chain of custody and that is supervised and then stored by home, by resident, to be able to validate who it's coming back to, and that there's a guarantee that when it's handed back to them that it has been properly secured that entire time. So we'll look at it, sir.
Sir, Sergeant Major, thank you for your time. I just have to quick piggyback on what Sergeant Major said about being compensated through the military. For everyone's FYSA, the insurance companies, the Army is going to want you to go through your insurance companies first and to provide proof of denial or drop of coverage or anything like that before the military will help. My question actually, gentlemen, is my family and I, we've been here since 2021, and last year during the scheduled power outages, we were told that if we went without power for 24 hours, we would be able to receive help. And now during this outage, it's, some families here, myself included, have gone longer than 24 hours without power or anything like that. So, and now we're saying that we can't receive help or aid unless it's a 48-hour. So my question is why the time increase?
No, sorry, I was just going to say, in terms of what help was available, I'm not tracking that we have substantially changed. We have not generated a whole new path or method to provide money back to families. There is not a pot of money there that the Army gives us that we can legally use to buy food or to hand to families out of funds that the government has appropriated for military operations. So I'm not positive on the 24-hour. I was here for that. We did not issue TLA during that period at all, and what we had established was after we had repeated power outages, we set up tents with cooling, some potential locations for extended services, and then there was, as had been mentioned a little bit online, there was food provided, but just to be clear for everybody, that the food was prepared by military units, but it was actually purchased via a donation that came into MWR, and MWR purchased that food that was then cooked and distributed. But that was from an outside community partner that donated money that allowed us to buy and distribute that food. So we didn't have that as an immediate resource here, and if we have acute problems, it's a little easier to deal with in terms of time. It's not easier on the family at all. Like I said, anything where you're experiencing an outage of extended period where you are losing a substantial amount of food that you rely on for your family, or what is critical nutrition for a baby, that is incredibly challenging. But we legally don't have a bucket of money that we can use. I would like to say there's money and hey, we can hand out grants, but that just isn't a path that is available to us. So I'm not sure I have a better answer, but double check and go back to what we did. Sergeant Major, you were here if you remember anything else, but I'm not tracking that there was additional support that we haven't dusted off this time.
So the difference last time is we had a little more predictability and we knew we were going to be down longer. The storm itself this time, discussions last night as HECO was working on it, we thought we were going to be up this morning. And we've gone a little bit longer than expected. So that's the difference between last time and this time. We had an estimate on how long we were going to be out. We brought in 1:30 or prime power, and we set up the tents and had food and those type of things in place because we were doing some work on the system. I do think the point brought up today about having some sort of emergency cell or some sort of emergency action center that we could set up that could be a short-term solution, I think is a valuable proposed solution, and I think we could probably apply some resources and effort towards that. It's not going to be the short-term fix. I know there are people still without power right now as the grid's coming up. There's still reports about people that don't have it yet. I know is individually probably being worked around post right now, but some of the suggestions today have helped out.
I actually have one more quick question. So with the comments being made that no short-term fix, we don't know how long this outage is necessarily going to be. Last year with the scheduled outages, we had organizations donate generators and everything to basically cover the loss, if you want to call it that, of the power. In the event that this outage goes longer than what it's anticipated, is there a plan for that, something to that effect of using current unit organizational generators and stuff to supply power to the housing areas?
I think you bring up a good point. Is there a current plan right now? There is not a current plan, but I think your recommendation is something that we'll take back into consideration.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Sergeant Major.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Hey, we had a really good question along the lines of what was just raised. Hey, and the question is, there's another storm cell coming in the next week. How are we going to be prepared? Number one, we're going to go back to HECO and discuss with them identifying circuits and lines where vegetation needs to be removed so they can take appropriate action. So that'll be a coordination piece that we own. We also own a better communication back out to the families, and an education and information push as well with respect to claims, homeowners insurance, and the AER process. And then the third aspect is that we'll take back for consideration is being able to designate potentially a facility that can provide essential services, power, that can provide water, food, potentially refrigeration, storage going forward. We'll have to work through those courses of action, but those are my takeaways from today's discussion.
Good afternoon, sir, gentlemen. I had a quick question, two of them. So we focus pretty heavily on families and on post-housing that is affected. Of course, it's very important. But a question that I always hear in my company is, well, what about the barracks soldiers? What do we do when there's power that goes out? And power did go out to the Wheeler Barracks over the course of this incident. Do they get per diem? Do they get grants? Do they get loans? What is the plan, if there is one in place, for when they lose power? So we're not like forgetting about them.
Okay, so for instance, and there were barracks impacted by this one as well, but it would fall under the same as residents, so we can authorize TLA for soldiers and barracks as well. The only distinction that I would highlight, and this may sound a little specific, but if it's somebody who has a meal card and is fed in a DFAC, if the DFAC is operational, then they would not be authorized TLA for meals. It would just, so they wouldn't get the per diem, they would get the TLA for lodging. But we could also look at that in terms of, could you say, well, if I'm in lodging, then I can't come back to the meals. So we're working through that one on the legal side. If we're displacing you out of the barracks and you're away from the DFAC, my pitch would be that you also aren't able to use the DFAC for meals if you're staying in a hotel. So we would push to authorize all of it, but that was a point of discussion today that we're working through.
Thank you. My second question is that something that may be immediately within our power to institute is that maybe we should amend the Blue Book to, for the post and for the division, to include that commands down to the company level have a designated or appointed person to be here at these town halls whenever they come up to take notes and disseminate that information. Not meaning any disrespect to any commanders or first sergeants that weren't able to be here because they're otherwise occupied. We have a mission, we have to do that. But as far as I know from my company, I'm the only one that's here. And we have so much work going on that I'm not sure anyone else in my company is able to attend this, or either physically or virtually. So if it wasn't for me here coming today to be here to take notes to rebrief my commander, would they be notified? Would they be in the know as we all here physically present are?
That's a great point. We'll talk about it at this month's boss meeting, because I do think that's an opportunity for some of our junior leaders to become more involved in what's going on and passing the information. So I'll talk to Sergeant Fan if she's not listening from upstairs, and let her maybe push some of this information out across the boss community as well. But thanks for your input.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. Sir.
That's okay. You can go.
Okay. So mine will be really quick. I have a screenshot from the Army Garrison website from the last power outage issue, and it says it's about the generating station on Wheeler. It's a 50 megawatt generating station. So right now it sounds like from the Garrison commander's comments that there is no switchgear that connects that directly to all these substations. Is there a plan in the future that will connect those substations together?
Yeah, so good question. We were discussing that. So the line that was damaged is part of the network that we would use to feed power from the generating station over to the Mennerher sub. And that is why we could not isolate and feed from the generating station. So that it takes 2 to 3 hours of switching to isolate it, but that is a 50 megawatt generator, but we could, again, not get that power from the generating station over to Menaher. And yes, there is a project that is part of the Installation Energy and Water Support Plan that would bring in a supplementary line that would allow us to have what we would term in the power business as omnidirectional power. So we would have, basically the short is, it would establish an alternate route and would, if that was in place, would allow us to power Menaher off of the 50 megawatt generator, even if we had that same fault we had last night. So we're going to push that one and try and elevate that for a more rapid implementation, but there is a project identified that would fix that issue.
Do you have an estimated year that might be completed, sir?
I don't have one. I would be lying to you if I gave you a specific year. I would like it done immediately, but immediate is a relative term because we'd have to get that one funded, and then construction timelines can be challenging. So we're pushing to accelerate it, but it'll take a little bit of time.
And I just wanted, the reason I brought up that screenshot was because in the last statement here it says to serve as a backup power generation station during a catastrophic event. So it probably should be moved a little higher on that priority list.
Absolutely. And so for context, when we say catastrophic failure, the other thing that does is if there is a significant event that brings the generating stations off-grid from HECO, that would allow us to maintain. So in the situation, tsunami, hurricane, there is a limited capacity for generation on Oahu as well. There were rolling blackouts across Oahu several weeks ago, and the generating station came online, was powering because all the lines were good. But during the previous weather events, it's been about 2 weeks now, they lost 2 of the power plants that operate for a while, and so they did not have enough power to power the grid. Generating station came online, and so it does give us redundancy, but we have to be able to get it from Schofield South Range to Menaher, and that was our issues. We couldn't get the power there.
So, I mean this respectfully, but who is going to hold the 4 of you accountable for everything discussed today? There's a lot of, we're going to go back and get answers, we're going to go back and discuss it, but what is the timeline for that information to be sent out, for those decisions to be made, for those plans to be put in place? And when are we going to know about them before the next person loses all the milk or we have no groceries and things like that? Because you guys we're going to discuss, but when are you actually going to put something in place, put something on paper, and make it happen?
Yeah, I'm accountable. And the timeline, we'll go back, we'll take all the information, and we'll publish back a plan of action that we'll go forward with.
Publish it to who, though? Because it's already been made clear you guys don't communicate well on the Garrison page. So are you going to call every family and let them know? Or are you sending out emails? Are you sending them to companies? Like, what are you actually, doing, though?
Yeah, I think we will always try to use the chain of command to disseminate information and reinforce the chain of command. And then we'll discuss with our public affairs team and the Garrison public affairs team right in the back on how we can best disseminate that information to ensure the widest dissemination and understanding.
So what's the timeline on the plan for all of this then? At what point should we expect a dissemination on backup power places or food plans or that? What's the minimum timeline on that, especially since we do have another storm cell coming?
Yeah, on the minimum timeline, I don't know. I'd like to say as quickly as possible, and we will hold ourselves to that. We will look to have something by the end of the week. But I'd like to be able to give you something that we have thought through, that we can resource, and that we're prepared to execute.
So should nothing come up at the end of the week or at the end of the month, who am I calling to go, well, where are we at with this? Because Army fastness is a little bit different from civilian fastness. I'm a first responder, it's a little bit different from that. But I have a family to take care of, and I need to know what that looks like should this happen again. We've only been here a year, so this is the first time we've experienced it. But I need to know what I'm expecting, what I need to prepare for. So if it's not by the end of the week, then when is it?
So I'm struggling because of what to say. And I very much appreciate your pointed question on when this is going to happen. But we've been talking during the CIE, the Community Information Exchange, about the upgrades to the power system, and I've been here a little over two years, and the information goes out, and so my frustration is that how is that medium? Is that medium not affecting you? Is that medium not getting to you? What is the most effective means of communication for you to receive information? That would be good information for us to get back. We've held town halls before. We hold community information exchanges. We post stuff on Facebook. We post stuff on Instagram. And any time that we have a incident, that is the first thing that we talk about, is our ability to communicate and how we communicate that information across this installation. So I'm making myself available right after this to talk to you to find out what would be the best means to receive information to the community, because what we're doing apparently is not working from the discussion in here today.
I think a lot of it comes down to if it's a situation where I need to save my phone battery, I'm not getting on Facebook necessarily to check every message or Instagram to see what you guys are doing. Like you said, you guys have a chain of command, which means my husband's first sergeant or whoever should be able to send down word for word what you guys have put out to send to us. Almost every unit on the space does or should have an SFRG that has an email that can be sent out, or a phone tree. I did it for 4 years at our last station. There are processes that can be worked, and you guys just are talking in circles about how you're going to do it. Instead of putting a timeline, we'll have a definite information to send out in a week or in a month, and if that's not good enough, we'll do another one.
Great idea. We should be using our phone tree. So we will, again, we don't know what resources we currently have to apply to maybe some near-term solutions. And power's come back on and off during this conversation that we've had here today, so I think we need to assess the situation before we put more information out. We started this meeting with the information that we had, and we haven't gotten updates on the status of the power system. So if you'll allow us to come back to you with that here at a later date and time. And again, I think the venue for getting the most relevant information that we have right now is going to be on the Garrison page. But I do want to talk to you right after this, because your idea of the phone tree, I don't know why we didn't do it last night. That would have been a great idea to get a late work call out and to have an update on that type of information. So we just didn't think about it.
Okay.
So I'll follow up with you right after this. Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for taking your time to listen to everybody. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I have to ask is, with the privatization of the electricity, we have no way to contact HECom for any electricity on base. If you go to them, you want to report an outage, you have to have an account number with them. We don't have account numbers with them, so we have no way to contact HECom to get reporting an outage. It's through a third party, so we don't know if it's actually getting reported on time. And then we have no way of finding out from the power company when we will be getting our utilities back on. It's disingenuous to hear we have no timetable for power restoration for a power station. That's a wrong answer, in my opinion.
No, so it is a question, and it's one that we've discussed. So right now, when you have an outage, we're reporting to the community center. IPC is doing a very good job of informing us, but right now it is incumbent upon the Director of Public Works, DPW. They are coordinating with HECO and identifying where we're getting those reports from, because you're absolutely correct. You go on HECO, you want to report an outage, you have to have an account number. Nobody on installation has an account number. There's effectively one account, and that is the Army account, and that is for all power across all installations on Oahu. So you don't have that feature. We've looked at and asked, is there a way for people to be able to report based on an address, and that doesn't exist yet, but that is something that we have identified and are trying to work for, but I don't have an answer for you right now. So what DPW does is contacts and gets estimates, and I'll tell you, it took longer than I would like to be able to have an answer for the community on Menaher. They had to do some clearance of limbs in daylight, and that was conversations with, there's 3 different channels that from Garrison to HECO asking them consistently, like, when we need an ETR, we need an ETR, what is the ETR, what is the status? And they simply were trying to clear faults. So if there's one single fault, then they say, hey, here it is, this is the fault, and we have an ETR. In the case of that one, they knew the line was down, but they didn't know why or where, and so they had to trace the entire route of the line this morning, identify where the faults were. They thought they had initially the clearance done. They went to re-energize a little earlier this afternoon and found that there was one other, either it occurred after they came by, a branch that was leaning that came down, but they had more trimming they had to do in order for that line to hold, and it took longer. Yeah, it would be nice to be able to say, hey, I can log in by individual, but that is not in place at this time. So that then falls on our shoulders to communicate and acknowledge. More timely in terms of not having an answer, but just acknowledging or saying, hey, there's an issue and we're working it, and then fighting to get as much information as we can and pushing that more consistently out to the community.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for your time. My name is Staff Sergeant Fernandez. I would like to piggyback a little bit off Staff Sergeant Davis regarding the single soldiers, specifically regarding the DFACs. From my understanding, there's one that's open right now, and for where my soldiers reside, it's a cross post. So for them to get there, it's a little taxing. So obviously they're going out and buying food. So my question to that is in regard to their BAS and the missed meal vouchers, if there's a way to expedite the missed meal voucher where they don't actually have to go through the process. Maybe there's a memo that we can put out where they're getting that money back automatically, or a percentage of their BAS, especially with the storm that we're expecting here in the near future. If that's already in place, those soldiers know, hey, if you're spending the money here, don't worry about it. The portion of your BAS regarding those missed meals will come back to your pocket. And then my second question regarding the single soldiers, that the TLA it's an amazing opportunity, and it's a great avenue for these soldiers, especially to have power and AC, but it's only good for soldiers that have GTC. So my second part of that question is, what are we doing for the incoming soldiers that are coming in, that are just now moving into the barracks with no power, that haven't had their chain of command to walk them through the process of getting a GTC? How do we provide help and assistance to those soldiers? Thank you.
So, the two Warrior restaurants, Wings and the Bistro, both have backup generators, and those two restaurants are the ones that are open during times of power failure. If we continue to have power failures, the Bistro is prepared to go to Mermite Food to provide food for all those soldiers that are on SIK. Bronco DFAC will be open this evening, and I know the Bistro should be open this evening, and then Wings is open over on Wheeler. So I'm not sure why one DFAC is only open, or is that what you're telling me, or you think that only one is open?
That's what's being communicated to us about the DFACs. And for soldiers to cross posts, especially the ones without vehicles, it's kind of a pain. And technically for the regulation, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the DFAC has to be within a certain distance of the barracks for those specific soldiers, and this one specific is not. So for the missed meal vouchers for those soldiers specifically, that was mostly pertaining to what my question was about. But I know that my company battalion probably is not the only one that's experiencing that. So it was an overall question for the division and the posts.
Okay. And we do have the ability to run shuttles. Units can use their TMPs to run shuttles to take their soldiers over to Warrior restaurants if need be. However, when you're talking about missed meals, really that's a PAR that's generated at the company level, and the company can sign off on that PAR and get that up to the battalion commander, and they can file for their missed meals voucher. It's not that intensive. I don't think that should stop soldiers from filing for missed meals if this power situation prevents them from getting to food. If you have specific soldiers that you would like to talk about that we need to Mermite food to a certain area, please come and talk to me. I know the barracks that are out of power right now are possibly up in the 700 series in the IJK area. And I'm actually being told they're back up, and that one's the one that's closest to the Bistro. So hopefully I've provided you at least some information.
And then the question regarding the TLA for the soldiers that don't have the GTC, how do you suggest we move forward for those soldiers?
Yeah, if we go to TLA for soldiers that don't have GCCs, the chain of command would need to expedite. And I do think there are probably solutions where we can do a centrally billed account. Actually, I know there are solutions where we did centrally billed accounts for soldiers during Ohana that couldn't use their GTCs. So if we go that direction, we'll do something along those lines.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Sergeant Dalton. My question is regards to what many people have brought up during this meeting, how the COLA cut has negatively affected both soldiers and families. So my question is there any possibility that's going to be reevaluated? Because as we've noticed, the cost of food and living here in Hawaii is fairly exponential.
Yeah, a little bit. We don't disagree on the reduction of COLA. We agree with you on that. Steve, Colonel McGonigal can talk a little bit about how COLA is evaluated in that process going forward.
Yeah, sir. So it's a DoD evaluation, and it was evaluated last fall. The service components here in Hawaii, so the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, all went back and pushed back with INDOPACOM to DoD, asked for a rapid reassessment. They did a rapid reassessment and came back with less of a decrease, but still a decrease. And when you request a reassessment, then the service components and INDOPACOM cannot request for another assessment within a year. So the soonest that it could be reassessed would actually be moving into summer of 25 would be the next reassessment. So there will be some time where we don't have a direct leverage to be able to reassess that based on the current way the DoD regulation is written for COLA. And for context for people, it's when the COLA went down, it wasn't an assessment of saying it got cheaper to live in Hawaii. What the COLA looks like is what does it cost to live where you are versus what does it look like in sort of a stateside average. And basically, it didn't get cheaper here, but inflation in the states brought that level up. And so what it does then is it results in a COLA decrease for where we live. And that's why the commands here pushed back and said, no, a COLA decrease is inappropriate. But it got better, but we still ended up with a decrease here.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I would like to address one of the questions that we got online. It says, can family members with EFMP have guidance on getting off island before their spouses derotate? There is something called EROD, or early return of dependents. Those are given on case by case. If situations are arising and family members need to return to the states prior to soldiers deros, those can come up through the chain of command, and we have oftentimes, outside of emergencies, authorized them to return. So that is a method to do that, and it's not just specifically for emergencies, but for most situations that we deal with soldiers and with EFMP soldiers and family members that might have circumstances that come up. So the EROD is available to soldiers, and if there's a situation that we're having with power outages and it's putting additional stress on their families, that might be a venue that we can also look at.
Hello, good afternoon. So I guess my immediate question, like what immediate resources do you have for parents and the community for like immediate relief for people who are now going on 27 hours no power and about 6 hours no water? So there's no way that I can cook at home. My children are there. What do you guys expect us that don't have the money to go out and go buy food? Like right now, say I go home and I need to make a meal for my family. I don't have that option for me. What immediate resources can you guys either intel or offer the community to help alleviate this type of situation?
Yeah, So I don't have a magical pot of money to hand out. In terms of other resources, there are, I could say go to ACS and looking there. So we are going to keep the EFAC open until at least 2,200 a night. So working to coordinate that one.
I have a solution, but he hasn't shown it.
Well, yeah, so sorry, Major, that's one, they're a chain of command, so one of the, there are other services, but every service you still have a chain of command, and then there are chaplains, there are other avenues for approach and support in the community. There is, programs that are out there through ACS that come around, and if you've made contacts there, those, there is options for, new parent support program, people that come out to houses. So it depends on what the acute need is. There is not a resource that we can easily brush across the entire community to say problem, to fix all of the problems. So it's really initial a matter of identifying, some families are probably okay, and they say, hey, I'm all right, I got this under control. And there's others that have, because of accumulation of things, acute needs, and it is a matter of identifying where those families sit and bringing resources. But I don't, sitting here know where some of those acute problems are to be able to bring resources against those, to be able to say there's a broad, hey, this is the resource to go to. It really sometimes depends on a case-by-case basis, and that's where engaging either with chain of command or in community or asking, hey, what are the resources? The ACS building and team is pretty good. If somebody walks in the front door and says, I need help, here's my problem, they work fairly effectively at matching you up with resources as best as possible. But the first step is identifying what are those acute problems, or where is the family struggling, and what is the need, and are there options or resources to bring to bear?
Yeah, so before I hand it over to the Sergeant Major, just to amplify a little bit, so we're going to keep the Emergency Family Assistance Center open. If there are specific requirements that are needed, that is a place to go. We will certainly stick around as long as we need to hear individual requirements that you may have, and then work to leverage the appropriate resources to address those concerns.
I'll be sitting right up here after this is done. Please come on up and talk to me, and then I will link you up with some people to get some help in your direction.
Absolutely.
Right after Staff Sergeant Davis back there, and right after her. And then my chaplain has just walked in, and he's standing right behind you, and he'll grab you after I get off the mic here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir, and community, there's a resource at the Garrison Chaplain's office. They have a commissary gift card they can give to any emergency needed families. So I ask all the family who are in need, contact battalion chaplain, and they can get you $25, $50. Depends on the number of family dependents. They can, I think, support up to, I believe, $100 commissary gift card. So contact UMT, your unit chaplains, and they will help you to get that through the Garrison Chaplain's office for the helping hand funding.
Thank you, Chaplain. It sounds like we have somebody that could use some help right now as well.
Hello, gentlemen. I was just wondering, what time is TAL going to be given out tonight? Because if we go home right now in Canna, we don't have power, we don't have water. It's 4:01, the duty day ends in an hour. Babies eat dinner at 5:30 and bed by 7. What time is it going to be, okay, you guys didn't get power back, let's put you in a hotel? What's our deadline?
So there are some residual issues that are coming up with the connection between Kastner and Menaher. There was a circuit tie that we did back in August 22 to try and shift load from Menaher to Kastner that still has some pockets of outages, and I believe that's what we're addressing here. And they are working, sir. The PX has come back up. The Paradise Shopette has come back up. But right now, it appears that there is a couple of pockets that I'm trying to identify.
Very good question. Let's talk, just tell me real quick, if a soldier family right now is without power,
Yeah.
what is the process for them to get TLA?
Or what time for tonight, for like children? Am I gonna be at 10 o'clock at night and you're gonna say, okay, it's late enough, let's get your kids out of bed?
Yep.
Because they're not
Go
sleeping.
ahead.
Yes, sir. So it would be TLA memo. I don't believe we put a signature on that. It would be signing the TLA memo, producing copies, and delivering those over to the EFAC. Like as we said, we'll stay open, and then validating where do we still have outages, or what are the impacted communities, so that when people come in, they say, oh, I'm in this housing area, and we issue them out a TLA memo.
Okay.
That didn't really answer my question. What
Yeah,
time can we as a family, if I'm sitting in dark at 9 o'clock at night, what time are you going to say, okay, you deserve to have power? What time are we gonna go?
Sure, I sign a memo, run copies, and put it over there. So, I mean,
So at 5 o'clock, at the end of the duty day, at the end of this, what time are we expected? Because I still don't have power, so I'm gonna go
No, I-
home, pack up a bag, get my baby ready, and we're gonna go to a hotel, but I'm waiting on that memo.
Okay. I understand.
Can I get the memo here? Can we leave with memos?
Yeah, great question.
Why do we have to go to another building to get something that we all here know we need?
Yep. Okay. Let's go ahead and get the memos down here, and if you have, and then we'll work through the process right now.
Also, the gift cards. I do appreciate that they're there, but why do we have to drive? When 1, 2, 3, I could probably count 30 people that are in need of those gift cards right now. That's why we're here. So why are we leaving, driving, wasting gas, wasting time?
Dan, can we bring gift cards?
Because I think we all need it. We don't
Yep.
need to like wait and time and
Yep,
things to be
fair.
passing.
Great point.
Let's get our babies in some AC. I have
Okay.
a 2-year-old at home.
and sir, it is a resource. The Garrison Chaplain's Office does not have enough gift cards to hand out a gift card to every single home
So
that
not
has been
everybody's
impacted.
gonna get it.
No, they have gift cards, and it's generally managed through the chaplain for a queue. I'm just, for clarity for everybody, there is not an endless supply that they have on hand right now that they can hand out.
No, that's what I'm saying. At least the people that are here that showed up that are like, okay, we're a little desperate right now. We need some help. I'm gonna go to the store right after this because my fridge, again, we lost power in the morning. I'm almost at 30 hours without power. My kid's milk, all his food for dinner is trash. So I'm leaving here to go to the commissary. Why do I need to leave here to go somewhere else, to wait in line, to get approval, to go to the commissary, to hope that if I go back to my house, I'm not even having power to put it in because I don't have a memo to go to the hotel. I want to take care
Again,
of it all.
very, very good point. Let's go ahead and work through getting the memo here. And for the individuals right now that are 24 plus hours like yourself, we
Yeah.
can work through disseminating those at this location.
Okay, so stand by and we'll get those before we leave.
That's right.
Roger. Thank you, sir.
And sir, update, the water outage discussed, that was a scheduled outage for critical repairs on water tanks, and that has been restored.
While we're up here talking, if you have any questions, we're here to answer.
Hello. So I don't really have a question. I just clearly want to say that I don't feel like y'all care about y'all soldiers here. I feel like this is our 4th duty station. This is the only duty station I feel like my husband has been stressed, that families does not be taken care of. Like, even with this situation right now, like people say they got babies. I don't know if y'all think about people with SIDS, pregnant women, and the power have went off plenty of times when I was pregnant. And nothing ever is done. It's uncomfortable, it's hot. I'm the one with the son with the nosebleeds. That's scary to us as parents. We're not close to home, which, I mean, that's not, I guess, y'all problem. Because, I mean, we chose to come here at the end of the day. But I feel like, y'all know we don't have no family here and stuff. The hotels, I feel like that's the least thing that y'all can do. So I don't really have no question, but It's like something have to get done. We been here almost 3 years. It's almost time for us to PCS. But like people said, when people coming in, they don't know what they looking forward to. Granted, we about to leave, so I ain't gonna say I don't care because I care about other people. I care about my neighbors. I felt so bad for my pregnant neighbor to sit outside all night in her car. It's a lot that I feel like stuff is just thrown up under. Y'all hear us, but y'all not listening. And that's my biggest problem with here in general. So when everybody asks what the solution is, it's like y'all tell us, okay, this get done, but nothing is ever gonna get done. I'm sure we all know here today, we just gonna go home and it's gonna be the same thing next week when the power outages. It's gonna be the same thing because we done heard this over and over and over again. So it's like nothing ever gets resolved. So like I agree with her, the last lady that came up here. Thank you for getting to the bottom point because we have to know something today. Them kids cannot sit in no hot house like that. So, and we don't have it where we can plug up fans. We can't even do that. We could just sit in a hot house all day. And like she said, our power been out since yesterday morning too. I took my daughter to breakfast yesterday and my power, it did come back on, but when I came back home, I smelled my house and I knew the power went back out. So it's like we just went grocery shopping ourselves, like, what's the issue? And I understand y'all say we're taking out loans and stuff, but like I said, again, we're about to PCS. We have to pay for another car to get back. We don't have money to keep on spitting out. We have 4 kids. We just cannot do it. And it's not fair to us. Y'all soldiers, they work so hard. And I feel like they work for nothing. So that's all I have to say.
Hey, thank you very much for sharing that.
So there is one other online question that's popped up a couple times that I do want to mention is about, we do have in Oahu every single branch of service represented and those branches of service living on other installations. We did have an Air Force family that stood up here. So to be clear to everybody out there, the TLA memo authorization, we cannot authorize TLA for other services. We can also not authorize TLA for DoD retirees that may be living in some housing areas, or Department of the Army or DoD civilians. So it is authorization for active duty service members that are in the Army. The only other component I want to say about that, sir, is and we won't go through branches, but there are different guidelines and stipulations that installations use between 24, 48, 72 hours on when to start looking at TLA. But as we move into a situation or issue, installation Garrison Hawaii is reaching out to the other installation commands. So Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam, Marine Corps Base Hawaii, and the Coast Guard to notify that we do have a power issue on the installation so that those services are tracking. And then if we move towards issuing TLA, we will also notify them that we are issuing TLA for service members. In the event that we had the extended 50-hour outage on HMR due to switchgear issues out there, in that instance, we were able to accommodate the other services in E-suites that did have power in coordination with Island Palm, so we didn't have to issue them TLA, but for Schofield, there is a significantly higher number of other services. So coordination across the services, but it is a by-service authority. So just for clarity, TLA memos, that covers the Army. It doesn't allow us to immediately help Air Force service members. So as we're looking through right now, sir, memo up here, and I'm going to have to recommend that we adjust the memo so it says until is restored right now. I don't want somebody to have a memo that then causes them a challenge for filing. Generally what we do is restoration plus 24 hours. So if a family doesn't have power now, they go check into a hotel tonight, power comes back on at, say, as they're going to the hotel, they would have 24 hours after restoration. So they could stay in a hotel that night and have a timely manner to check out and move their family back into the home. So the memo's here, sir. I can look at pending and I'll talk to the SGA, but I would recommend we modify that to give the families a little bit extra protection. So if we have a hot or hard restoration time when they're filing it, it doesn't get looked at and say, well, it says until it's restored. It was restored at 1700. You stayed at the hotel that night. So I want to make sure we're protecting families financially as well.
Let's make sure we got the memo correct to account and provide as much agility in there to family members as possible. But let's work through that right now. Is there any, so for people that aren't here, what's the process to go about getting this memo? And let's just use an example. You lost power on Wheeler. What's the process now? What documentation needs to be brought forward to be able to get the memo, to be able to either to get partial or full TLA?
So the family would come in and they would say, this is the sponsor who is on the lease. This is this family, and we're in this community, and we're requesting a TLA memo. They log in, say for instance, the Smith family from the Kalakaua community came and picked up a TLA memo, so we have a rough record of who's coming to pick out memos, and we hand them the TLA memo. For clarity, sure, that TLA memo is for reimbursement once they file the TLA, so the family would make a reservation, and that would be put on, again, it's a family with a credit card, GTC reserving that. It could be done on a personal credit card for reimbursement as well, but putting a hotel reservation down, going out and staying in that hotel, and then filing the reimbursement for TLA on the backside of that.
Okay, let's police that up and make sure everybody is as clear as possible. So soldier or dependent shows up, there's the sponsorship requirement, there's the location of where they live, and there's a log, and then the memo is issued. Is that correct, Steve? Okay. Does that answer your question on what's required with the memo? Yes. No, I don't think so. And that's what I wanted to clarify.
So we won't be getting the memo when we leave now? Or will it be adjusted in?
I want to make sure that we're clear on what requirements for the memo. So spouse is here right now for the memo. Is there any, or soldier, is there any requirements that they have to provide to be able to receive the memo?
No, sir, so it is the family and identifying who is the sponsor and the neighborhood. So Smith family, this neighborhood address. The service member doesn't have to be present to pick the memo up, but for clarity, the service member is the one who has to file the TLA on the backside. Yep, just for clarity for everybody.
And that's what I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that process. Okay.
And sir, we passed the memo off, so we'll get that updated and get some copies here, and I can wait here until we can get that for anybody who wants it here. We can do that, but then also simultaneously pushing that over. We use two terms, ACS, Army Community Services, or EFAC. EFAC is a specific entity that stands up to support families if there is an issue. ACS is the building general, so it is the same location, Building 690. Whether or not the EFAC is fully stood up, ACS will be open until 2200 and issuing for impacted communities.
Okay, so everybody is clear. You can wait here, and we'll work through the process with the TLA memo, or you can go to the Emergency Family Assistance, and the requisite requirements are neighborhood that you're in and sponsorship, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Again, just want to make sure that everybody is clear, and we try to eliminate some of the perceived barriers. Yes, ma'am.
Making calls, I don't have status on that one yet.
I think with the commissary gift cards, what I heard is there's not an unlimited supply, so there's got to be a process working back through the battalion UMTs to be able to make a decision on passing those out. That was my understanding. Okay. Yeah, he may be going there right now. He just walked out. We'll get in touch with him. All right, go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. Sergeant Majors. So I'm fortunate enough to have a generator. My question is it possible to install some plugins so I'm able to power my whole house just instead of like plugging in a few items at a time?
Can you say that one for me one more time? I apologize.
So I have a generator, right? So instead of just plugging in a few items at a time, is it possible to install like a plug-in at the wall so I just plug in the generator so I can power the whole house instead of powering things like one at a time?
Well, look, that does not exist, and with privatized housing, that would be a request, and we'd have to work with IPC for clarity if you are. I think we would be challenged to get that approved, but if it was approved, the other side of that be if you would be plugging your own generator into a house to power the house, there would be potential also concern for where would liability lie for damages to the house and wiring. So if there is a generator that you have, we also have to be cognizant of running generators in communities, impacts on neighbors, et cetera. So like having people running loud generators in their backyard next to other houses is also not an ideal situation. So powering something critical and running a cord, that really would come down to, are you doing it? And if your neighbors or somebody is highlighting it as an issue, they would have to look at and say whether that's allowed. But generally, we aren't looking to run a whole bunch of generators in backyards across the installation to power things.
Okay, I think we've got several. Okay, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Hello, gentlemen. My name is Staff Sergeant Munoz, and I have just a simple question. So with the amount of power outages that are going on Oahu, are you guys actually physically there to walk around and inspect the actual facility that is holding our power? Or are you guys being constantly updated throughout the year of the system or the contract that is actually holding all our power?
So there's a number of facilities and routes and paths that provide public utilities across water, wastewater, and electric. Electric and wastewater are both privatized contracts. There's substantial work that goes into all of them. That's something we spend quite a bit of time on. There is an effort to bring in additional personnel resources, what we would title the Hawaii Infrastructure Task Force, that it started really mid-year last year, and we've hired on 3 new civilians that are principally focused on that. So does it have a measurable result for you today? No, it doesn't. But there are efforts to bring in additional resources against the infrastructure problems here in Hawaii. That is additional funding for infrastructure projects principally focused on water, and then additional personnel to work on contract oversight and development of projects to move forward on electric and wastewater in addition to water. So there are efforts underway. It doesn't help us right now today as we are talking about a power outage, but I would say the issue is known and is working, but the turnaround time on that is frankly not what I'd like to do. I would really like to not have to be addressing power outages on a routine recurring basis, but unfortunately that is the situation we're currently in.
If I may just add on, I can tell you firsthand, the Army isn't doing too well as it stands with like retention and all that types of stuff. But I could tell you personally speaking from like a lot of soldiers around, it might just be a day or two of just no electricity, but that does play a huge morale part within the Army itself. I like to say that it's just a day or two, but as me being about to become a father for the first time with my wife being pregnant, that does kind of bring upon issues myself. But then again, everyone's facing the same problem. I'm not the only person, so I'm not special. But being in the Army for as long as I have been, coming here, I've only been here since June of last year, and I've experienced multiple power outages. It does play a huge role with your morale coming to work every single day, but not to the extent where it's drastic. But to these guys experiencing this for their first time, being newly into the Army does depict a bad picture on it. And as me being a staff sergeant, trying to encourage these guys to stay in a lot longer and see it for what it actually is and not just for the moment or the experience, does play a huge role in it.
Darn, I couldn't agree more with you. I agree with your statement.
Thank you.
Okay, for everybody, we're going to wrap up. We got some things that we need to sync up with our staff. I really appreciate all of the feedback. So, Chief, if we could grab Colonel Martin and team, let me just make sure that we're synced on this. And then we owe follow-ups on communication flow. We owe follow-ups on the facility and the TLA memo, because I want to make sure we're as precise as we can be. And again, the Emergency Family Assistance Center will remain open tonight until 2200. And we would encourage you to use that as well as your chain of command to raise any concerns or issues that you may have. Thank you all very much.
Well, thank you all for joining us today, in person and online. Just a reminder that this town hall will be available on our Facebook page to share with other leaders so they can share with their soldiers as well. Thank you. Mahalo.